The judge did say that some of those documents are going to be unsealed. Of course, though, they have a little bit of time that they're giving the government to make some of their own redactions. Bringing back in our attorney, Ken Blinken, who's here with us on Live Now from Fox. And Ken, I know you were listening in too with us as we were just hearing some of the details that were going on inside of that courtroom, inside of that hearing. I think one of the things that surprised me that she had mentioned was the DOJ actually only needed 1 week to make those redactions. Do you think that that was smart on their case to have it being done in such a quick timeline?
Well, look, let's be clear. The DOJ is going to submit proposed redactions in 1 week. And those proposed redactions, the judge is going to consider each redaction individually and why it is being redacted. And he's going to make a ruling that's going to, probably grant some of those redactions, potentially all of those redactions, but I'm sure some of those redactions are going to be granted, specifically with respect to confidential informants. If you have confidential informants and you have an ongoing investigation, you have a sincere interest in keeping their identity secret and to basically not burn your informants. With respect to other redactions, the judge is going to have to make a ruling as with respect to the ongoing investigation and balance that against the interests of the public in knowing what the hell is going on here.
Well, and I like too that you're making a good point about how much is going to be redacted. Of course, we know there's going to be a couple things that are straight away, but how much of these documents do you think actually will be unsealed by the end of it? Of course, as you mentioned too, it's all down to the decision of the judge once those redactions are put and submitted.
I think a lot of the affidavit's going to be probably redacted. Certain things that they're looking for, certain identities are going to have to be redacted, series of events that are alleged in the affidavit, factual events that led to informants coming forward or informants witnessing certain things. Those events are going to have to be redacted. Because let's say you've got an informant that was in a room where there was only the president and one other person. It's not that hard for former President Trump to figure out who the informant is. And from the informant's identity being uncovered, the investigation could become severely compromised. I do think it's, the judge is going to allow them to submit their proposed redactions. And then as Ms. Schulman said, he's going to make a ruling, but he's going to give them time to appeal that ruling before things get unsealed. So this could be a protracted battle in some sense. There will be an appellate review, but it seems like it's going to be on an expedited basis.
And hearing that point too, how long would it be until we could possibly see these made publicly? Because it does have to go and be submitted to the judge. The judge has to go through, approve his. They could possibly be then appealed again by the government. So it could be quite some time until we do finally see what's been in these documents that led to the raid.
Yeah, and if it's an issue where, it needs to go to the Supreme Court, it's going to have to go through several layers of appellate review before it makes it there. So it could be a while. I would think that they would want it released on a short time frame. We're coming into a midterm election. I mean, it's very suspicious. I feel like the appellate process is going to be abused so that the information in the affidavit and maybe some of the unsavory aspects of this search warrant being executed are going to be concealed from the public until after the midterms. It almost seems like it's timed that way.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see just how much back and forth there is going to be when it comes to all of these redactions. Obviously, we know what some of them are going to be, but how much information else are they going to try to withhold from being publicly released? Anything else you think important to mention when it comes to this decision today? Of course, as you've said, the public demands that they deserve to have answers. And so that's exactly kind of what the judge also had ruled on here today.
It is such an unprecedented series of facts that a former president had a search warrant, executed on his home and might be running for president again, so potential political candidate, that it's so unprecedented that this ruling, while on its face seems very fair, it's giving each side time to have their position heard and considered by the court and ruled upon and for necessary appellate review to occur. But the problem is, this is so unprecedented that this is not a normal case. This is a former president. We are heading into a midterm election. We're in a situation where every day we're seeing this administration make moves that are curtailing the average citizen's rights. You know, it came out this week that this administration was going to social media companies such as Twitter and getting people silenced. They were asking Twitter to silence people and suspend their accounts, and which was proven in the case Alex Berenson mounted against Twitter. So it's very concerning that an administration that would do that on Twitter to a journalist, a former New York Times journalist, would also consider signing off on a potential raid of the former president's home and future potential candidate. It really has a very unsavory taste to it.
Well, and I think, too, another thing that you've pointed out before as well is this raid really also could potentially mean that other witnesses, if these documents are released, other witnesses that may have information that they wanted to come forward with now may be more hesitant to do so in this situation, especially now with this ruling of the affidavit being now going to be released.
Yeah, but the people's identities are going to be protected. I'm certain of that. At the very least, names are going to be redacted throughout.
Any final points you think important to mention here today, especially since we were waiting all morning for this decision to come down, and it will still be quite a few weeks here until we finally do see some of these documents unsealed?
You know, I didn't vote for President Trump, and I got to say, though, there's been investigation after investigation on him. And I'm a lawyer and been practicing for a little bit. And I got to tell you, at a certain point, what's going on does look like a witch hunt. And the things that law enforcement is being weaponized, and it seems like selective prosecution, and it really seems very Stalinist. I mean, you've got a situation where they have essentially picked a person, former President Trump, and said, find a crime, find something we can use. Because clearly they want to find something, they want to charge him, and they would like to convict him so that he cannot run again for president in 2024. It's very clear, even to me, someone who did not vote for him.
Yeah, a lot of big questions still remaining unanswered. We do appreciate you talking with us here today, helping keep us track on what's been happening inside of that courtroom during today's hearing. Ken Belkin, thanks so much for being here with us on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll keep a close eye also on any statements that the former president makes, because, of course, he was one of those people out there publicly after this raid had happened. He had put it out on his social media page that they did indeed come and raid his Mar-a-Lago home. We'll keep a close eye out to see if he does have any comments to be made after this big decision made inside of that courtroom in Florida here today.